Hello everyone, thanks for stopping by today to check out this video. It's going to be very interesting and I'm going to go through a very thorough walkthrough and technical review of this software and how to get it up and running. If you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I use a Windows operating system, and this will be done on a Windows 11 computer system with a pretty high spec, because it was necessary in order to run this new AI software locally on my computer. So it's called Jan.ai and it is free, and there is a ton of code that you get for free along with it. It's all in GitHub, it's open source. They give you access to use all these different LLMs, and it's all in a really great web interface. And you can control it, of course, because it's all open source and code that you can change if you have the ability to. So basically, it puts AI right inside your computer system. I can't say that I've seen anything this awesome up to this point as far as having access to all this technology. So it's very exciting, and I hope you stick around and watch the video. There will be parts of the video where I scroll through all of the LLMs, for example, in case someone doesn't have the ability to run this, then you can see what's in all of them. And I'll put time codes in the video so you can skip around if you don't want to see stuff like that. Well, with that said, let's go ahead and take a look at the homepage of Jan.ai. And I will point out that you can install it using a program, or you can install it using open source. And I will be taking a look at the actual open source. So here is the Jan.ai website, and I do have it running in dark mode. You can switch between them up here in the upper right. So here it says bringing AI to your desktop. Open source ChatGPT alternative that runs 100% offline on your computer. And like I said, I'll go through and look at their README files and specifications. There's a lot of steps that you have to go through, and I wanted to show all of that in this video in case you're interested in actually setting this up. So if we scroll down, we can find out more about it. Well, this here on the right is what it looks like once it gets up and running, and you can change all these parameters similar to the OpenAI ChatGPT. You can customize different parts of it and ask it questions and change your models down here in the bottom left. And they do say, warning, Jan is in the process of being built, expect bugs. But while I was testing it, I did not have problems with it, so it looks pretty stable, and it's been under development for, I think it was about 6 months or something like that. And they say here, their core team believes that AI should be open source and Jan is built in public. And so here's the desktop app. You can just download and install an executable on your machine, and it does a bunch of things behind the scenes to do that. However, I was more interested in actually getting the open source code up and running, because then I could customize it in any way that I wanted to and really make it my own. So that's the desktop app. The mobile app, they say it's coming soon. Take your AI assistants on the go, seamless integration into your mobile workflows with elegant features. Offline and local first. Conversations, preferences, and model usage stay on your computer. Secure, exportable, and can be deleted at any time. So here you can see it says it's OpenAI compatible. Jan provides an OpenAI equivalent API, a programming interface, at localhost 1337 that can be used as a drop-in replacement with compatible apps. And so here you can see what's been completed and what's partially done, what the status of those are. And it looks like they're also building an assistance framework. But the local server, that's what I will get up and running in this video. I'll show you all the steps that I went through and some of the requirements and so forth. So there you go. That's an overview of their software, and it is up and running, and it was very smooth process. And there's other information up here if you want to look at the API reference, various documentation, developer information. Here I pulled up the architecture in their documentation. Jan has a modular architecture and is largely built on top of its own modules. Jan uses a local file-based approach for data persistence. Jan provides an Electron-based desktop UI, which does look really nice, and I'll be showing that in the video and show how it works with different models. It provides an embeddable inference engine written in C++ called Nitro. And here we can see the modules, the descriptions, and the API docs, which there's links to all of that. So their documentation is still under construction, but you can find out some really good things here in their documentation. So with that said, let's go ahead and start getting into more details about how I set all of this up and how it is running locally on a computer system. Here I've pulled up the GitHub page for the application, and we can see it's just mentioning that it's the open source ChatGPT alternative that runs 100% offline on your computer. It runs on any hardware from PCs to multi-GPU clusters. And there's a little demo video that they have on the GitHub page where you can see how it's actually working, where you're typing in questions, and then you go to browse all of the different models that you can choose from. So that's right there on the GitHub page. Then we have some additional troubleshooting information. As they mention, it's in development, so you might have problems, and then they have some instructions here on how to reset your installation. I didn't have to do that because I didn't have any issues with it. Now there are some prerequisites, so I had to install some different software on to this computer system in order to get this working. And here is a command prompt on the left that shows some commands I ran, and then I'm going to show here the versions of Node, that's 20.10.0, and the version of NPM, which is 10.2.3, and also the Make version, which was important. The whole thing would not work if I did not install that. So on the left window you can see where I installed the Make utility with Chocolate, so Choco install Make, and also I had to install Yarn, and that's 1.22.21. so there is the command I used to install it, and then you can see the results there. Also down at the bottom you can see the Make -v, so you can see the version of Make that was on here, 4.4.1, and that did work. So once I got all those things installed, I was able to take the next step, which was to clone the repository. And there is a ton of code, which I will show later in the video, just to give you an idea of just how much incredible code is part of this system. So I've popped into the actual running application before we go through all the details of how I got it installed and what I had to do. So here we can see you can create new threads or delete your threads, and they have the thing called the Hub, and that shows different models. So I asked it a question here as a helpful assistant. Tell me about YouTube videos or making YouTube videos. There you can see the RAM and the CPU. So 30% of the RAM is used and only 1% of the CPU. And you can see the actively running models there that I chose. It was 3.8 gigabytes. And we'll look at those in a little bit more detail. Then we have some settings. We can customize some things in the application. And there's a list of all of the extensions. A few experimental modes, and right there, enable GPU acceleration for NVIDIA GPUs. And that's on because my application and my system actually can support that. I did not turn on the experimental mode, and I did not enable the API server yet. I will probably do that in another video. There's so many things to talk about just in this video, so I won't be doing that yet. And there are some keyboard shortcuts which can be helpful. So they show what some keyboard shortcuts are to help you use the application. And then clicking there takes you back to the main chat window. So then we have all these parameters here on the right side. And again, this is all running inside the Electron application. And after I got all those tools installed, I was able to get this up and running. So this is running a chat against an open source model on my local computer system, which is really awesome. And during my testing, it did give good answers. And now I've only tried a couple of the large language models, or LLMs, so far because there's so many. You'll see that in another part of the video, just how many there are available. And so right there you can choose like the current one, which is 3.8 gigs, or there's OpenAI ChatGPT, or 3.5 or 3.5 turbo, or 4 if you have a key. So now here is the hub, and you can see different models. So there's recommended models, and then you can click on this link here and see this is a 4-bit quantized iteration of this Instruct 7B model, and it tells you like different information about each of these models. So we'll take a look at some of the other parameters here. Mathematical and logical abilities, experimental model of Green Node LM and Leo Scorpius using, well, I didn't see that. Open chat, AI feedback. And also you can see the size of these models are getting larger. This is based on the Llama 2 architecture. And then here's where you can hook up the OpenAI. If you have keys for that, it will walk you through getting that set up. So you can actually use OpenAI if you want to as part of all of this. So you could do a comparison if you hook those up to some of these other models and see how you like the results. So this is a 3 trillion token data set, 1.1 billion parameters Llama model. This is the DeepSeek Coder, 1.3 billion, 2 trillion tokens. So that's a 2.7 billion parameter model. Llama 2 chat, 7BQ4. It's an iteration of Meta AI. Code Ninja's fine-tuned Open Chat 3.5. It's getting a little bit larger here on some of these model sizes. So I'll just go ahead and scroll through these in case you're interested to see what's available here. And so basically what happens is once you find one that you're interested in, you can install it, but first you have to download it. And if you're looking at the size, now we're up to 22 gigabytes. So they are getting quite large. So you'll have to have enough hard drive space and internet bandwidth to be able to download these. And there's just a download button there, and then it shows the progress as it's downloading these different LLMs. And once they're downloaded onto your machine, then it's really easy, as you'll see later in the video, to be able to select between the different LLMs. And then in the bottom left of this screen, you can see again which model that you're actively using. Now we're getting down to the last few. This is 24.62 gigabytes. And this one is 38.58 gigabytes. 70 billion parameters, it looked like it said there. And this is Meta's AI Llama 2 Chat 70B model, 40.90 gigabytes. So I'm scrolling back up to show the question here. What are your recommendations to grow a YouTube channel fast? And then it gave like a bunch of different answers. And so here, again, I'm just showing the different parameters, highlighting what's in their user interface. I set the maximum tokens to 4,096. And you can change this prompt template, and you can drag this and make it larger. So there's really awesome ways to be able to customize this. And the engine parameters, you can customize that also. So there was my question. Give me some recommendations on growing a YouTube channel fast. And now I'll ask it some other questions and we can see what it says. Can you summarize top 10 tips to make a new YouTube channel? And we'll get to see how fast that it works. Now, I didn't scroll to the bottom so we couldn't see it working, but we'll see that next here. So there are top 10 tips, and you can see it took 33 seconds. So that one actually took a little while. Some of them, a lot of them are fast. So let's go ahead and we'll ask it another question here. Can you expand in more detail on your top 3? And you can see in real time how many seconds. And it's explaining in more detail, just like I asked it. Create high quality content. Consistency is key. So now I'm going to ask it more personal information. Do you know who the top YouTube creators are? And so you can see here, it's giving an answer about different creators and how many subscribers they have. I haven't verified to see how accurate this information is, but I have heard about some of these YouTubers, and I know they're popular. And some of them I've watched myself. So now I'm going to ask it another question. Do you know who the fastest growing YouTube channels have ever been in the history of YouTube? And so it goes on to tell us, yes, there's been several fast growing YouTube channels in the platform's history. Here are some of them. So again, I've heard of some of these content creators, and I know they're pretty large channels. Then I asked it, hey, can you tell me how much money each of those channels makes per year on average since their channel started? And I think it's operating pretty quickly compared to using some other services out there, chat programs and so forth. Many times it starts to respond immediately, and I like how it streams stuff out here and kind of lists it out in a bullet format. And so there you can see it's telling us how many millions of dollars some of these YouTubers have made, and when they started, 2013, 2007, 2014, and so forth. Here I'm going to be looking at a configuration file, and also we're going to start downloading another large language model so we can try out a different one. And we'll go into the list of all of the LLMs, and I decided to choose this one here. So let's go ahead and initiate the download of this. It's 8.6 gigabytes. So here I'm selecting the Wizard Coder Python. It demonstrates high proficiency in specific programming languages. So I'm going to go ahead and let this download. And it does take a little bit depending on your internet speed. And at the bottom left there you can see that it tells us that it's downloading a new model. And then we're going to go ahead and use it. So while we're waiting, I'm going to go ahead and show some more detailed information inside of the code that I downloaded. As I explained earlier, how to get the code to your machine, you just use a git clone command. And so here's a command to run. It's called NVIDIA-SMI, and you must have an NVIDIA driver that is of a certain version, 11.4, the CUDA version 11.4. And on my machine I do have that version, so I was able to proceed. If you don't have that version, you will have to upgrade your machine or upgrade your drivers, possibly upgrade your video card. And there is the git command that I use, git clone, and then the name of the Jan repository. And you can see there's a lot of files and a lot of folders, and I'm going to go through some of them just to give you an idea. And the one command that started all of it there was make space dev, and that will create a local copy of the desktop software that we saw running. So if you don't have that make command installed, this will never work. And so down in the bottom here, I'm just showing make space -v, and it shows that I do have make installed, and I showed how to do that earlier. If you don't have a proper version of that utility installed, this will never work. It won't be able to build it. And it did take a little bit to build this whole thing out once I ran that command. I didn't show that in the video, but it does take a little bit, I don't know, maybe a couple minutes, something like that. And I'm just showing the package.json file. You can see there the dev command, what it does to get it started. And you see that it mentions Electron, and we can see some dev dependencies there. Here is the Makefile, and there's a bunch of different sections, how it's building the UI kit, and you can see if it's equal to a Windows operating system, and what it's going to do. And again, this is running on a Windows 11 machine, the latest edition. And so you can see the command that it's going to run there if it's on a Windows machine. Otherwise, it does a different command. And so then it will install yarn dependencies, and it builds the core and extensions. So there's a lot of commands that it has to do there. It's going to run a PowerShell command. And as it's building it, you can see all this stuff scrolling by in your console window. I actually ran it here. I'm in VS Code. I guess I didn't mention that. The free VS Code utility. And then it does some cleanup there. So that was the Makefile. There's a license, which you can see which license it is. Everyone is permitted to copy and distribute verbatim copies of this license document. And there is some other information, a Docker file, and then there's a demo GIF file. Again, it just kind of shows the system up and running, so it's kind of nice to have that there to see what to expect. And then they're just showing going through the hub. And they do have information if you want to contribute to the source code on GitHub. They explain how to do that. So now I'm just going to click through a few of the files and folders. There is so much coding that was done in here. It's truly amazing what is in this code repository that I pulled down from GitHub. There are so many folders. I mean, there must be hundreds of files. 1,000 man years of code. I don't even know exactly. It's a lot. And later in the video, I will show some of these statistics and charts from GitHub about how much activity has been going on. I think it was since August or something like that. So now I'm just clicking through to show a few different files in some of the different folders. I selected some. This is an index.ts file, and you can see on line 10 there it's running localhost 127.0.0.1. so there's basically like configuration parameters. That's one of the nice things about having all of this source code. If you go about it this way and set up this application, you can change anything that you need. All the source code is there. So you can make whatever kind of changes you want and turn it into whatever you need if it doesn't work the way that you want. So there it says use offline LLMs with your own data. Run open source models. So here is one of the model files. I went to the models directory, which is important. There's a bunch of different files in there, and so you can see in this code window how it tells you where the source URL. So that one came from Hugging Face, and you can see the URL for it, the ID of it, what the name of it is, what version it is, and all that kind of information. So there's like dozens of them in this models directory, and which means also it can be configured for other ones as things change in this space. And Code Ninja, I believe that was the other one that I used. It's good for coding tasks. There's a lot of different README documents in here because there's so many different folders. All the code is super organized into all these different folders depending on what the purpose of the software is. So like you can see, there's also documentation about engineering and developer and community and just so many things, all written in a nice format here. So it's an alternative that runs on your own computer with a local API server, kind of like ChatGPT, as you already saw. So yeah, the web folder has a ton of documents. The UI kit, there's all kinds of things in here. I mean, you can see all the different folders that are there. And again, if you just pull down this code, you can take a look at it, or you can just look at it up in GitHub. It's just really awesome that you have access to all of this code that all these people have been working on, and you can make it your own and do what you need with it, or just use it as is. It's, as I showed, very functional. And I think it's very exciting to have this kind of technology now at our fingertips to be able to use it either directly or change it. And of course, waiting for new features to come out, which I'm pretty sure it's going to advance pretty rapidly. I will be keeping an eye on this open source project, and I believe I'll be making other videos about it in the future. So I'm just showing another README file here about a different aspect of the software, talking about creating your own plugins or templates, creating extensions to the product so it's configurable. And there's the Electron, which is part of the program that we are looking at. You can see it has a lot of different files and folders and code available to change if you need to make it exactly as you want it. And we already looked into the docs. There's a lot of good information in there. So here I'm back on the Hub page, just looking at what's been downloaded and what's in use. So currently the Llama 2 Chat 7B Q4 is used, and it was thoroughly trained on extensive internet data. So the winter coder, I'm going to go ahead and change to the Wizard Coder Python, and now I'll do a little bit of configuration here, and then we'll start asking it some programming questions. So now I'm telling it instructions. You're a helpful programming and software engineer. And I haven't used this model before, so this will be the first time using it, and I'll ask it some questions and we'll see how it goes. So first I'm going to ask it what are popular languages that you know about. And it goes on to say that it knows about Java, Python, C++, and JavaScript, but I believe it knows more than that. Then I asked it, do you know C#? And it took 3 seconds and it said, yes, I know C#. Now let's ask it, what is or are the total languages that you can write code for? And it kind of repeated what it already said. It can write code in many different languages. So now I'm going to ask it, can you write me some code in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS for a tic-tac-toe game? And then it tells me that it can, but it actually didn't write it yet. So I'm going to prompt it possibly a couple other ways here. So now I tell it just to go ahead and do it. And it tells me, sure, I can help you with that. Okay, well, we write that code now for a JavaScript file, an HTML file, and a CSS file. So it tells me, hey, sure, I'll start working on it. This is where I see this little situation here, how it's different from OpenAI, ChatGPT, where if you ask it to do something one time, it will just go ahead and start writing code. So again, I'll ask it a couple other questions. It tells me it'll email me the code. It's kind of funny. So now I'm going to ask it a little different question here. What are your top tips for writing JavaScript to process JSON data? And then can you write sample code and show me now? So here it's actually going to start writing code. Here's sample code to process JSON data in JavaScript. So it sets up some sample data and then it does a JSON parse and then it logs it out to the console window. And then I asked it to write a full program to parse the CSV file and to output it into JSON data. And I told it the name of the file to use. And so there's a little bit more detailed and it has some comments in the code even. And you can copy and paste the code like you can do in ChatGPT. So here I wanted to show the running program. There you can see Jan, it's 52.8 megabytes, and Nitro is actually 5.6 gigabytes. So it's a very large footprint on your computer, and then Visual Studio Code, which is where it's running, is using almost 3 gigabytes. And if you look right below that, you can see memory usage is up to 48%. So it has jumped up. There's not that much else running on the computer system at this point except this program. There are some other browser windows open, but there's not that many tools. So here I wanted to show another aspect of all of this. If you saw where I mentioned the software that you had to install, it talks about CUDA. And so I'm just showing the screens that I went through to install this piece of software, and you can see like it's installing all these different components, and sometimes there were versions that I already had on the machine, but in a lot of cases this was all brand new, and so I had to let it install and download new software. And I went into the advanced options where you can see one of the things it tells you to do is use NVCC, which is right there inside that block. So you have to have that installed in order for this program to work. Now I did not change any of these options. I took all of the default settings, but I did just want to show the extent of all of the things that it installed as it was installing it. And so there is the NVCC. I believe that is the compiler that it's going to use. And this is version 12.3, which as of making this video is the most recent. So you may have to install this piece of software, which you can get from the NVIDIA website. So now I'm back in the GitHub repository. And this is where I was saying, of course, you can look at all the code there if you like looking at it from the GitHub repository and didn't download a copy. You can at least look at it from here on the GitHub page. Sometimes I like looking at it there instead. So here is the home page, and it shows popular repositories. The Jan, which is the one that we've been looking at, they have a sample app, and they have Nitro, a fast, lightweight, embeddable inference engine to supercharge your apps with Local AI. It's OpenAI compatible API. And it's just showing the repositories and how much activity you can see has been going on with them. And these are some of the other repositories out there. Some of them I've talked about in other videos, like LangChain, and I've used in some of the other software that I've been experimenting with. So again, yes, this is an open source alternative to ChatGPT that runs 100% offline on your computer. And so far in this video, you can see how that has all been possible. So we can see there's been changes made up to 33 minutes ago and 2 hours ago and so forth. And there's been 1,771 commits. We can see the latest version that's been released, and we can see how many contributors there are on the project. It says 24 there. Here is some insights. The number of contributors started, looks like in August of 2023 is when the code changes started being checked into the repository. Excluding merges, there's been 20 authors that have pushed 431 commits and 542 commits to all branches. 479 files have changed, and there's been 12,664 additions, as well as 6,905 deletions. And you can see who's been contributing the most software. Also, we can see the new issues, 105, closed issues, 247, and there's been 199 merge pull requests. So it's very busy, a lot of activity going on here. I'm showing some other insights. We can see again around the middle of August of 2023 is when it got started, and you can see spikes and the activity going on up through the end of 2023. We can see there were 599 closed issues, which is a lot, and 130 open issues right now. So it's pretty interesting to go read through some of this to see what's going on, to see if there are bugs or feature requests, things like that. So now I'm looking at the CUDA, which is what I was showing in those other screenshots. There's actually samples, and there's a CUDA Toolkit. And I'll go ahead and open that up here. This is what I had to download, and it kind of prompts you through. If you're on Windows or Linux, you choose your operating system and architecture, and then do you want it to be a local installer? And it's 3.1 gigabytes. So I had to download that and run it before any of this would work. And there are some prerequisites they talk about there. And then they do have CUDA Samples, which I will try to look at those in another video and run them now that this platform is up and running on this computer system. And they have a installation guide for Windows. They tell you what your system requirements are, the supported operating systems, and installing CUDA development tools and so forth. And it does go into talking about building the CUDA examples or samples, and you need Visual Studio, and that is installed on this machine, but I'm not going to go into all of that detail in this video. I will attempt to make another video sooner than later about those CUDA examples and open them up in Visual Studio and get them to compile and run, and we can take a look at that. It's very nice that they have all of this set up and available for free that you can download and try things out. There's a lot available here in this GitHub NVIDIA CUDA Samples repository. They also have a quick start guide. And the CUDA Toolkit provides a development environment for creating high-performance, GPU-accelerated applications. With it, you can develop, optimize, and deploy your applications on GPU-accelerated embedded systems, desktop workstations, enterprise data centers, cloud-based platforms, and supercomputers. So this toolkit includes a GPU-accelerated libraries, debugging and optimization tools, a C or C++ compiler, and a runtime library. So you get a whole lot, and again, this is all free. And now that I've installed it on this machine, there are other things that I can explore and try out. They have tutorials here, video walkthroughs, and you can see other products that are using it. They have blogs that you can read, and they're up to date from in 2024. And they have some latest news there. And this is on the developer.nvidia.com website /CUDA Toolkit. I will include links to some of these pages that I've been talking about in the video description so that you can easily access them. Well, I'm just about done with this video. I know there was a lot of details, as I said there would be. It's probably one of my longer videos, but there was a lot that had to be done in order to get this up and running on the machine. And now I have access to the source code, and if I wanted to fork it, I could pull down more recent versions as they make changes. I will be keeping an eye on this project. It does seem to be the most advanced capabilities that I've seen so far in this realm of having local and custom ChatGPT-like programs running with all these different models. And there's so much code, like we looked at, that's available if you pull it down and get it running this way. So it's really amazing. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you if you're going to attempt to get this up and running on your own machine. And I thank you for stopping by, and I thank you for watching and subscribing to my videos. And I'll be making more in the near future. Have yourself a great day. I'll talk to you soon.
If you like this channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content.